Welcome to Club Vibe 11.5. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll always be up to date whenever we release new videos. Also, check out our website. It's a vibe115.com for our full Viber experience. We offer groups, blogs, the art gallery, and much more amazing content. Join our community. Let's get started with this cool story. The storyteller named Mary. If you grew up in that neighborhood, there was a good chance you knew Miss Mary. Every evening, just before the sun disappeared behind the old brick buildings, Mary made her way to the neighborhood library. She wasn't an employee. She didn't receive a paycheck. Mary simply volunteered. And every evening, children gathered around her little wooden chair in the children's section, waiting for her to open a book. Mary would adjust her glasses, look around at those eager little faces, and ask, "All right, babies, where are we going tonight?" Because Mary believed you didn't simply read books, you traveled through them. One evening, the children might explore Africa. Another night, they were astronauts traveling beyond the moon. Sometimes they became doctors, lawyers, inventors, artists, kings, queens, and explorers. For a little while, Mary could make those library walls disappear. Some evenings, Mary was tired, her knees hurt, her back bothered her. Sometimes life had given her problems of her own, but Mary kept showing up because she understood something important. Children remember the people who show up. Many of those children had never traveled beyond their neighborhood. Some came from families struggling to make ends meet. Their world sometimes felt very small, but Mary used books to show them just how big the world could be. One evening, after hearing a story about a doctor, a little boy asked, "Miss Mary, you think I could become a doctor?" Mary smiled. "Why couldn't you?" That became Mary's answer whenever a child questioned their dreams. "Could I become a lawyer? Why couldn't you? Could I write a book? Why couldn't you? Could I own a business? Baby, somebody has to do it. Why shouldn't it be you?" Then one year, everything changed. The library lost its funding, programs disappeared, hours were reduced, and eventually the neighborhood received the news nobody wanted to hear. The library was closing. On the final evening, Mary sat surrounded by children who couldn't understand why their story time had to disappear. Mary closed the book in her lap and said, "The library might be closing, but stories don't belong to buildings." The following week, a handwritten sign appeared outside Mary's home. Story time, 6 o'clock p.m. And just like that, Mary's living room became the new neighborhood library. Children sat on her sofa, on pillows, across the carpet, and sometimes even in the hallway. And Mary continued asking the same question. "All right, babies, where are we going tonight?" Years passed. Children grew up. New children took their places. And eventually, some of Mary's children started coming back. Except they weren't children anymore. The little boy who once asked if he could become a doctor returned as one. Others became teachers, lawyers, engineers, business owners, and artists. And one quiet little girl who had spent years listening to Mary's stories grew up to become an author. She brought Mary a copy of her first published book. Inside, she wrote, "For Miss Mary, who taught me to believe my story was possible." Mary continued telling stories well into old age. Her hair turned completely silver. Her steps became slower. Eventually, the children sometimes had to help her turn the pages. But Mary kept reading because she knew she wasn't simply telling stories. She was planting something: hope, curiosity, possibility, dreams. Mary eventually passed away at a very old age. And for the first time in decades, 6 o'clock came and Mary's chair was empty. But her story wasn't finished. Years later, one of Mary's former children sat down with another group of neighborhood children. She opened a book, looked around at those little faces, and smiled. "All right, babies, where are we going tonight?" And once again, the walls disappeared. Mary spent her life telling stories, but perhaps the greatest story she ever told was the one those children eventually wrote with their own lives.